trying to be as productive outside the office. I don't work well remotely, bro. Sometimes I need to banter someone and make them feel weak to help me do my job properly.
Oh, pull your Jordan, boy.
Yeah. Jay, you want to like say, when's I know up with Gaga? And then that stimulates me. That stimulates me to get my job done.
You're such a dick.
He's a huge fucking thing, man.
Damn.
Oh, fuck.
Come on, it's the personal relationships, bro. It's like, yo, man, we feed off each other, we bounce off each other, and I need that, bro.
Gents, welcome to the first show of Digital Dyans. We are discovering the very diverse and dynamic and very wide world of digital. I've got Sia Mawisa and Sanele Mawisa, the Mawisa brothers, and of course I am Wasanga Meana. And it's not to say we're going to be trying to be pointed or tell ourselves we're experts. We'd like to share opinions and our own very own experiences. And I think one of the most topical items at the moment is cancel culture. Gents, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you, Wang.
So if you guys could give us a bit of a background of what you do. I'm mostly in paid media. And at the moment, online shopping has been the big thing. As you know, the COVID pandemic has affected the world in very different manners. And I'd like us to focus on that. We're calling it Sivalelekile episode because we're inside. People are trying to make money. Events have been affected as well. We know that it's easy to curate information and data and all those kind of lovely bits that we like to market on digital when we have content, which comes from an event. This is sport, this is media, and it affects a lot of things. But let's begin with the ugly side of things, the prickly side of things. We know cancel culture is predominantly based on morality and those people who we want to see representing various brands, various experiences in our lives. What do you think, Sanele, from your perspective in brand and marketing, we should look out for with these partnerships from a brand perspective and also from an influencer perspective? I mean, there's brand, there's influencer, then there's celebrity. How do you differentiate even between a celebrity and an influencer? Are they the same thing?
No, so I mean, this is quite a controversial topic, especially within the South African landscape. I think the influencer realm, the influencers right now have quite a negative sort of persona or perception around them. Most of this, if I'm being honest, is born in things such as jealousy and insecurity and just these human nature things, which doesn't allow people to want to actually dig deep and understand sort of the nuances that come with sort of influencer marketing. And if in respect to the South African landscape itself, the difference between celebrities and influencers right now is much, much closer than in a lot of other countries. I think in this country, they are in the same spaces, they are on the same platforms.
Thank you very much, Sanele, for that concise and very insightful response. Sia, in your mind, if you were to advise a brand, how would you advise them in terms of choosing a potential candidate to represent them in a brand and influencer collaboration campaign?
Hi, Wayne. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thanks for the question. For me, in terms of a brand and the people that you want to be associated with, in terms of someone that you're going to get into a business relationship with to represent your brand, it is very important that I believe that you have someone that stands directly in the brand positioning of the brand that they're going to represent, as opposed to shooting across the board and making it very bland and vanilla and also very difficult to believe. So in terms of influencer marketing in that sense, I always push for the fact that whoever you employ to represent your brand, it would be in the brand's best interests to make it a contract, to make it an ambassadorship, to make it who you are is who the brand is. And I feel like a lot of people lose a lot of sight of that because the pressures on client wanting us to give them reach and engagement has superseded the actual ROI that you can get from the personalities of both parties that are involved in the contract.
All right. So it's almost like finding a sweet spot that benefits and looks organic between the brands and the influencers. So you wouldn't exactly get, well, there is the case of Riky, who doesn't drink alcohol and has multiple sponsorships. So Sanele, I'll let you take that one.
No.
Ricky's special though. Ricky's special.
I know. Yeah, no, it's I mean, unfortunately, I've been aware of quite a few of these type of campaigns, and unfortunately, you know, what you lose there is the credibility from the brand side and the influencer side. You know, because there isn't that natural organic fit between the influencer and the brand. I've always said that, you know, the most sort of symbiotic relationships are one where that influencer in particular has an affiliation, or not an affiliation, but has sort of used certain products and services already of the brand that you're using. So what the brand does is that it needs to be seamless into the influencer's life, right? So, you know, once you get a situation where there is quite an obvious understanding that an influencer working with a brand doesn't consume that brand at all, you know, your credibility, as I said, kind of just goes out the window in that sense. And it's difficult then to build it back up. So, you know, those type of situations I think shouldn't be happening in 2020. But unfortunately, we're surprised by what goes on behind closed doors.
So yeah, let's talk metrics, my G. I heard that you mentioned ROI, those lovely things, and return on investments, because there's obviously no company or organization that wants to spend their money or budget without getting the right type of return. What does that return look like, and how do you justify how you spent your budget?
Yes, and that's a very good question, because it boils down to a qualitative and a quantitative nature, and it's always difficult to translate to a client exactly what the ROI that you will get from marketing. And it's unfortunate because a lot of it is far more intrinsic than it is extrinsic. Because it's, in terms of tracking, as much as we are digital now, and in terms like using even the word digital, we are in a third world country. We are not as digital as the States or the UKs. Yeah, so it's very difficult to track exactly. If you put a billboard on the streets, there's no way to find out how many people bought the product that you're advertising based on that billboard. But
there's general that will tell you that there's an average amount of traffic that drives there. These are people who could have, like impressions, for example.
Yeah, you get maybe a 10%, 15% increase in foot traffic into McDonald's because you think it's that billboard. But what was happening at the same time? What was happening at the same time? There was the TVC that was out. There was also communicating the same message. There was something that was on digital, communicating the same message. How do you equate the quantitative measures on who brought what, and what is the value in digital advertising?
And even if you go into the analytics, you can have the first click attribution. You could also have the last click attribution. The person, for example, could have the first contact with on social media, but
it's about the journey.
Yeah, tracking gets very, very technical, but let's not get nerdy. Let's get a bit lighter with regards to the craziest campaign you've ever managed. Sanele, what is the most outrageous request that you've gotten from a client or a brand or even an influencer?
Geez, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's any specific scenarios. I mean, crazy requests from client. I think for most people who work in agencies, that happens on a weekly basis. And, you know, you always get that playoff between, you know, the client expectations and what their budget is. There's always kind of been that back and forth between what is possible and what you have available for you to actually get the job done. I think in terms of sort of craziest campaigns I've worked on, a couple of years ago, I worked on Tropika Island of Treasure campaign, which we shot in the Maldives for about 3 or so weeks.
So that's where those Instagram posts came from.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. But yeah, I think crazy in the terms of 18 are multiple partners in it. There's a PR agency there's a digital agency, then you have the above the line agency, then you have the production company. So all those elements coming together to try and produce something at the end, within such a short space of time, was a very crazy experience for me. So working 18-hour days for 3 weeks, trying to get a very, very big production out there, that was quite intense.
That's crazy, man. And I take it was successful. I saw a lot of the social media and all that kind of stuff. It looked like it popped off.
Yeah, no, it's one of those sort of campaigns that have sort of entrenched itself within the TV media landscape. There's consumers are always expecting the next season of Tropika Island of Treasure, because it's been quite successful. And I think it depends.
How do you measure success? Is it you just assuming that because you put in all that work, it is successful? Were you able to have a conversation with clients? How did you measure your success?
Yeah, no, I think whenever you do a campaign, it's natural to have a post-campaign report, post-campaign analysis, where you look at sort of the objectives and KPIs that you set off at the beginning, and then you measure whether or not you've managed to hit that. So obviously, when you're looking at something like a TV show, you're looking at your I think it's your ARIs, or so, I'm not sure what the term is, but you look at your viewership, and then obviously because the campaign also feeds off of a digital campaign that's running alongside the TV show, looking at your engagement, the branded posts that go out on the
MTV Mamas You Brought Future to South Africa. How was that, bro?
Yes, yeah. I don't think I was there for the mamas. I think that's what you did. I know we did work together, but it was after I arrived. We did a lot of work.
Okay,
but I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
What we did do was a lot of influencer management between you, Clicks, and I. Used to handle teams of 30 at a time, maybe even split into 6 different groups of 30.
Do you remember there was a time when we were called like the Black Twitter specialist?
Yeah, exactly.
It was a bit of a double-edged sword. One side, it was great, but then one question.
On the other side, you've got a black company that's making money off Twitter now, and helping other black people get on. And that's the value I saw in it personally, and that's what actually brought me to it. But then when I found out, we all know, maybe we don't.
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's leave that part.
Yeah, let me keep mum on that one. In terms of influencer requests or requirements or things that come from client, I will always.
I think for you is always pushback. How do you push back reasonably when you see that you're going to create expectations you can't meet?
Okay. So what happens a lot of the time is that a client will come to you with a request to hit certain KPIs, right? It could be engagement, it could be reach, it could be ROI, whatever it is. But they will be hell bent on using an influencer strategy without any actual strategy behind it. And you end up using the wrong people, because the brand manager of a XYZ brand, ichomene nalomdu, and there's like this stuff that happens in the background which kind of taints the actual image of the brand eventually. And it has happened many times. There have been like a lot of progress, should I say, in terms of influencer marketing. I think people are more aware of it. It's far more transparent. People are forced to #ad to make sure that whatever you do promote is visibly seen that you're sponsoring it. The consumers know.
You're saying that your strategy itself usually gets it gets limited by the relationship between the brand and the actual influencer who has to do the work. Your strategy gets compromised because the influencer's like, nah, B.
Exactly. Like you get people like Sanele mentioned earlier with Riky and Russian Bear. You have Civ with Lager that has been going on for like 15 years. That man doesn't drink at all.
Wow.
And the people, that's the thing, because there's a dichotomy now between the people that follow the influencer and the people that love the brand. It's not the same people.
Oh, snap. So the numbers themselves won't actually equate to the actual value for the marketing objective.
Exactly, because now you're no longer even hitting your target anymore.
Okay.
It's
quite
now.
Interesting. Sorry to judge here. Just on that. Fortunately, where I work, we've kind of a tool called Tracker where user handles into the tool, and it will literally break down who their audience are, what brands they kind of follow, what even wage gap they're at, what their social media following is, what their vocation is.
That's a heavy API
I don't feel safe
thing
anymore.
right there.
Yeah, so you can literally.
How much do you pay for that?
No, let's not get into that.
So you can literally overlay your influencer with your brand and create
and see the match.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is nice. What is with the COVID and the pandemic? I mentioned that I saw a lot of different companies, excuse me, a lot of businesses have been able to pivot and provide those services because obviously now people are limited in their movement. Online shopping has come about and essential services. In New York, there were literally bars that turned into selling fresh food because they couldn't sell liquor. And then now we see that Facebook and Instagram are opening up shopping soon. Sanele, we also saw a bit of remote working. Companies might have cut budgets in terms of paying rent and those kind of things. It's kind of ironic, really, for digital companies and agencies to not be able to utilize online tools. What does the normal of digital look like? What do you think the new normal will look like? And is it really feasible?
I think I'll take that one.
All right, take it.
I'll take that one. First of all, for me personally, I don't think that there's going to be a new normal that is going to exist in a format that is going to last for the rest of our lives. I personally believe that eventually everything will come back to the old normal that we've always known. It might not be next year, it might not be 2 years from now, but we will go back to shaking hands. And I don't believe that the new normal will persist for very long. In terms of the marketing environment with the pandemic, I am very interested in terms of, as my profession dictates, the digital aspect of it. I'm not too concerned about the outdoor billboards and the rest of the above the line stuff. But what has occurred to me is that digital behavior has changed drastically since lockdown, because your screen time has probably gone up to unprecedented levels. And that is going for everyone. So what now are you doing with the extra time? What sites are you visiting? What's grabbing your attention now that you have all the time in the world to do so? And and that's why like online shopping, e-commerce in itself, the ones that are now allowed to do so under level 4, will make bank. Will make mad bank. And that's really the interesting aspect, and also how we will continue to or how the digital behavior will be after it's all over.
So Sanele, thank you very much for that. That was quite insightful. From Sanele, I'm going to ask you about the events aspect of it, because stitching the online world into the event and working with the brands and the influencers and also even social media marketing is one of the areas that you work in. And I mentioned that it's always easier to create content when there's an actual event rather than creating content for an event that hasn't happened yet. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so I think for the most part, brands are going to find it quite difficult to build a bank of their own ownable assets. So every brand obviously needs to make sure that they're producing creative content and having a bank of creative content that they can fall back on. Which is why now you'll see kind of under this lockdown period is that a lot of brands will repurpose content. So trust me, if you look on, especially Facebook, if you look on your brand's Facebook pages, if you go back 3 or 4 months, you'll probably see the same creative post that came out today or yesterday, because there hasn't been an opportunity to create new content. And specifically within the eventing space, you're right. I think brands use events a lot to kind of create that bank of assets based on whatever the brand's passion points are. So if you have a brand that speaks to, you know, luxury and lifestyle, and let's say it's an alcohol brand and they're trying to promote that, they'll literally create a storyboard, a mood board, and a shot list for one of their events to create those moments. So those assets can last way past the event, and they can be used for other different content pillars for the actual brand, other than the actual event space. So yeah, it will prove difficult for brands, especially with the lack of events. I personally don't see sort of large scale events. I mean, large scale being like probably about more than 200-300 people coming back before next year. I think it'll be very difficult for a brand to justify that, even if it comes into a space where legally and based on regulations they're allowed to. I think it'll be a space that a lot of brands are scared to kind of just jump into. So up until that point, brands will be quite under a lot of pressure to get creative out.
No, those are brilliant responses right there. A lot of people are looking to plan for the future and the potential easing of the lockdown, and certain people are even upskilling themselves. What is your advice to people looking for opportunities to work in digital? Where do they start? Because it's quite broad. It's quite broad.
Yes, and also what you did bring up earlier was how people just think that they can enter digital just because they have 500 friends on Facebook and 300 WhatsApp story views. It's just that there's a huge bigger aspect in what it takes to understand digital advertising, and people that want to get into it. And I mean, like, also a large part of the reason why we even having this conversation right now and going to be posting it is because this is what we're going to do. This is the alternative extra stuff that we're going to do in digital to keep us engaged, to keep us also on our toes, to also keep us updated about anything that we are passionate about. And if you are very passionate about the digital realm in itself, this is a very good time to push those boundaries. Like, almost nothing is unachievable right now. Have you seen Jason Derulo on TikTok?
Dog.
That rebrand.
I respect him purely because of the content he's been creating. But the one
that's what the pandemic has done. Yeah.
You are a fantastic writer. That's one aspect that I know about you, but you're also a great strategist. So you know that you can write, but you also know that you've studied a specific thing. How do you hone in on that passion and get it to online? For example, I know I'm analytical. I don't like math, but I'm analytical.
Yeah. You like attention to detail. I know you.
Okay. But how would you then translate your skills, your passion into a job in online and making money and profit?
And speaking, yes, thank you for the question. Sorry. Just speaking as a writer and someone that is creative, this environment that we live in now, for me, has negatively affected me in terms of having to be cooped up in your house the whole day. It does, I feel, stifle my creativity. But there has been some very good work that has been coming from across the board under this lockdown, even using the pandemic in their messaging and leveraging that for the benefit of the brand. And it's been great work. And maybe it's just something I need to work on personally. But it's your work is cut out for you in the environment that we're in. You basically have to talk about this or something very adjacent. You can't be so tone deaf as a brand, I believe, to talk about something that is so not connected to this global pandemic. It is global. It's not just SA. It is everywhere. And I think that's what clients are very scared about.
Yeah, I like that. I like that Jason Derulo reference. In just closing, Sanele, what would you say then with regards to brands? I know it's not an easy question, but what advice would you give to people who want to get into digital? You've managed many teams. You're leading social media teams as well, and social media itself is not easy. I mean, you could even talk about platforms. I know specifically that a lot of community managers who are really good. Diversity is important, which is why you need to have women, because those audiences speak to something that you may not have as a man. So if you could give advice with regards to people, it's so broad. And I know Sia covered his aspect, but social media, like alone, you used to have that person who say, hey, download a Facebook. We need a Facebook.
Yeah.
They told us our business needs a Facebook. So
Yeah,
how
do you know how to put in a profile picture? Yeah, it's just very basic. Yeah.
So Sanele, then in that aspect, what advice would you give for someone who's preparing themselves for digital?
I think
And
you
that
mentioned
aspect of digital, sorry, because digital.
yeah, I think you mentioned it before around kind of understanding why you kind of want to be in the space, what you want to get out of it, what you want to achieve. You know, for me, with the multiple agencies that I've worked in and a lot of the colleagues that I've worked with, especially in the social space, I think I will always prefer kind of working with or having a working relationship with someone that organically, through their own sort of platforms, has a talent or has a very keen interest in the content that they're producing. Because I feel like that's the most difficult aspect to teach. So I will hire a content creator that has never ever managed a social media account ever before, because I can teach that, right? So those technical aspects of like, this is what paid looks like, you know, this is kind of the most used kind of creative platforms, X, Y, and Z. Those things I can sort of, you can build on and you can learn about. But for me, there's sort of an inherent talent around understanding your audience, understanding your own passion points, and then leveraging those things to build a brand for yourself.
Yeah, man. And then in terms of consumption,
and just to add on to that.
Yeah, sorry, we're running out of time. We're running out of
Oh,
time. You have to move on
okay.
to the next topic. So, in terms of media consumption, does how we consume content affect how it is created and distributed? Because yeah, you said that we're spending a lot of time. So, would you then, if you see that according to your different channels, people are spending more
Yeah.
time, how then do you think media consumption has been affected and your distribution?
Yes, and in I don't know if you want to talk about strictly currently in the environment that you're in or in general,
Right now,
but either or, the way that I see it, you give the people what they want. To quote Subona, you give the people what they want. It's a demand and supply situation for me. You see new platforms like TikTok coming out, which is not that different to what Vine did. But what is the difference between the two? You know, what is making TikTok? And we don't know that maybe in a year or two that TikTok will be dead. But that is what is being shared a lot, and that is what people love to see. It is being shared across all platforms, which is not something that Facebook is doing. There's no there's no Instagram or Facebook stuff that I'm seeing across every platform. And it's just because now content creators have all the time in the world to create content, and they understand, and everyone understands that it's under lockdown. You don't have to go out and do the most. They're doing what they can with what they have.
Yeah, we'll have to continue. We ran out of time.